Morning, Austin. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this conversation because Pat and I spoke to your community recently, and I was on your show, and so you just understand what it's like to be a fellow podcaster. And we were both talking about how the fact that I'm staring at people doing my lawn right now, and there's people in my house, and just total fail on scheduling stuff.
It always happens whenever you schedule lots of podcasts. All things happen. Like if you got a gardener coming and they're going to be blowing like leaves, it's always that day.
100%, 100%. So, for the listeners that are not familiar with you
Yep.
and the community you built, why don't you give us the short version of it?
Sure. So my name's Austin Brawner. I'm the host of the E-commerce Influence podcast, and I interview e-commerce operators, business owners, marketers, and people who are out there in the trenches. And we talk about how they can grow their business and build more wealth and create more fulfillment in their life. And I've got a community called the Coalition. It's at brandgrowthexperts.com. And we work with e-commerce marketers, business owners, and we help them figure out how to grow their business in a way that doesn't take away from the rest of their life, right? So in a way that allows them to unlock growth without just working harder. So a lot of the stuff we think about is just increasing leverage in your life and in your business.
So right as we were jumping in before we hit record, I asked you, what kind of direction we want to take with the conversation, and I loved what you said. So why don't you just almost like you said, what's most interesting to me right now, and I think it's a fantastic topic to kick this off with.
Yeah, I think what's most interesting to me right now is how do you build a business that you love to work in, build a business that you're able to sell in the future, or build a business that allows you to build wealth in your life and create fulfillment in your life at the same time. Right? I think the reason it's so fascinating to me is because I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. I've got a community of very successful entrepreneurs. And at the end of the day, the biggest challenges they all face the same thing. Am I fulfilled doing what I'm doing right now? Am I doing the right thing? And am I doing it in a way that I can sustain over the long term?
So, because you're talking to hundreds of entrepreneurs all day long, so you're kind of synthesizing general themes, and that's what I find super intriguing to community managers and owners and coordinators like yourself, is because you're kind of just gathering this pulse of what everybody's talking about, right? So it's not like some random study that had a specific purpose that was launched. It's like, no, here's the things that everybody's talking about all the time. Where is it that I'm curious, as you're talking to your community, doing these events or wherever you're getting the information, how do those problems manifest themselves in these entrepreneurs' lives and in the conversations?
Well, I think it's interesting because actually, when you look at the community, there's not like a ton of conversation around that, right? Like if people are posting about ways to grow their business, things that they've learned, that sort of thing. It's more when I have one-on-one conversations with entrepreneurs and we're trying to figure out, like, if I'm working with a coaching client and we're kind of peeling back the layers of the onion to try to figure out what's going on in their life and what might be holding back their business or where the opportunities are, that's when those conversations show up, right? Because it's always a little bit below the surface, which, you can't really tell what's going on in a business from the outside until you sit down with a founder and you recognize that somebody who on paper might be the most successful person you've ever met is completely miserable in their business and in their life because the way that they've structured the business doesn't suit them anymore. Maybe it did for a certain period of time, but now they feel kind of trapped in their own business. And that's when the reason I'm interested in it is because of all these conversations that I've had with founders that from the outside looking in, you'd be like, oh, this is the most successful person I've ever seen in my life. Yet that's the reality that they're living in.
So give us some examples of like things that these people say where you're going, okay, I see a trend going on here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it often comes down to time is the number one factor, right? When people feeling overwhelmed and frustration related to the amount of time that they have in their life dedicated to being able to do other things or work on the stuff that they want to work on. And I think this comes back to to leverage. And, as you go through multiple, as your business grows and you start to see that there are different levels and you have to continually level up, if you get left behind a little bit and your business goes further ahead than where you're at, it can put you in a position where your time is completely restricted, and some of the joy that you got from running your business is just completely evaporated because you feel like every single day you're like waking up fighting fires with no end in sight. And you may not have the tools to get to the next level. And the next level might look like hiring some people to help you, hiring more experienced people to help you and take over some of those challenges that you feel like only you can do at this moment. And
What
that's,
are the,
yeah.
I was gonna say you touched on something that I think is an interesting thing, which is the self narrative going on. So do you see like feedback loops that people get in that like their mindset could be potentially one of the biggest challenges?
Yes, I think it happens often when companies grow really, really fast. And it's interesting because I work primarily with like e-commerce brand owners. And what's so interesting about this dynamic is that you can create a product and you can put it to market, and it could be like a $10 million business, like basically overnight,
I
because there's
know.
so much demand
It's
for it, right? You
crazy.
can sell to anywhere in the world. And what's interesting about that is sometimes the like self-talk or like the mindset, it can happen so quick that you don't even really have time to adjust and
Mhm.
realize that the business now is much larger than it was a year ago. And the same thing that got you to have success, to launch the product and start selling it on Facebook or wherever you are selling this product, isn't going to allow you to get to the next level, and isn't going to allow you to free up your time. I think the big one is like that you have to do all the most important things yourself, and you can't trust other people to be able to take those over. Or like I think the most limiting one is just not trusting people in general. You're never going to get anywhere if you can't trust somebody to help you grow your business. It's a recipe for lack of fulfillment in your life, frustration, and slower growth. It may be fast growth initially, but that turns around and then it makes it very hard to sustain it.
Super interesting that you brought up trust because a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed a guy named David Horsager who wrote the Trust Edge, and he's got like this whole trust study. The title of the podcast was "Trust is the most valuable asset of an entrepreneur."
Yeah, I,
And because it's like you just have this, you hold on to everything, and then you can't. I mean, things can engulf you without you knowing it. You had said so actually, but going back to kind of like your overall what's interesting to you, which is a life like this business and life by design. And
yeah.
what you had said a couple times, what on the outside means success. Oh, everybody thinks success. So what is your definition of success?
Oh, that's a good question. My definition for success right now is that I can wake up and enjoy what I'm doing for most of my, like, from a work perspective. Work does take up a good chunk of my life, my waking hours. And I want to be able to enjoy that. And so I want to wake up and enjoy what I do. I want to have incredible relationships with my family, with my friends, have a level of health that feels like vibrant and something that it also feels like sustainable for me, that I can sustainability is really important to me. When I say that, I mean, like, I want to be able to do the same thing that I'm doing consistently for 10, 15 years without burning out. That to me is success. And I want to be able to make enough money to provide for my family, and also provide for and increasingly increase the amount of money that my team is making so that they can reach some of the goals that they have. That to me right now is what success looks like. So yeah.
I like it, man. I think it's a fantastic definition because I've had a couple interviews over the last call it half a year where we're kind of unpacking this, and and time comes up a lot, and then optionality and choices, and like I think it's just such a hard thing because there's this narrative of money and revenue and employees, and like that's how entrepreneurs judge each other, and, and
Yeah.
like and Yet there's so many people like unbelievably like dissatisfied or unhappy, and like they don't know how to deal with it, man. Like how did you come to that conclusion? Like, did you go through a journey to reach that conclusion?
Oh, for sure. I think the first job that I ever had, like real job out of college, I worked for a very fast growing startup in Los Angeles, and the culture was very different. It was like the epitome of like crush it culture. Like, we're going to grow, be $100 million, and we're going to get there as fast as we possibly can. If we don't hit $100 million, that's like basically no success. And it was very invigorating. I was like very excited. I worked incredibly hard. I remember meeting my friend and his dad at this Korean restaurant in Los Angeles, Korean barbecue. And I was working so hard that I got there like 10 minutes early, and I actually fell asleep in the waiting area before dinner because I was just like so burned out and tired. And it was interesting for me because that was my first experience with business. I think I carried that over into my first company where I was working as a consultant and building an email marketing agency. And I had this level of belief that needed to be, I was building it to build it versus building what I wanted. I was building it to like show off what we could build. I think that is how I was thinking about it at the time. And I really didn't I didn't want to build the agency. I think like I got halfway down this path and I was like, this is where it's going. It's not what I wanted. I didn't know how to turn around and get out of that, and ended up shutting it down and pivoting and kind of taking more stock into like, why did I start doing this? What do I actually want in my life? Like for me, like many entrepreneurs, freedom is a really, really big driver for me. And that idea of what freedom is a moving target. For me, initially, it was like be able to make $10,000 from anywhere in the world, so I can like live in Southeast Asia, like work from like a beach in Thailand. When I was much younger, that was my idea of freedom. And that's a
Hey, it sounds good, right? I
yeah,
mean,
it was a motivating force for me, and
yeah,
like,
no, I totally get it.
and then as kind of evolved and changed, as hit goals like that, and they've moved towards larger, different ideas of what freedom means. I've evolved kind of my view of what it means to be successful and build a successful business. I think also from working with a lot of entrepreneurs and seeing that there's no like, you can build a business in so many different ways, and the amount of your revenue definitely does not correlate to how happy you are. That is I think I'm in a unique position where I get to work with so many different entrepreneurs and see that happiness is definitely not related to your revenue.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
even just to take that one observation that you have, and then I'm going to take 5 years of this podcast
Yes.
where revenue doesn't even equal enterprise value or how much you take home.
No.
And the people that end up on my show, a wide range from shutting down to netting $150 million, and the people that net that much, where their net worth is that, typically very unhappy. And I think it's this interesting, and maybe I kind of rally it back to you after this. We're like, so like I'm thinking this one gentleman specifically. He grew his company like crazy, and then he sold it. Like, I mean, he was doing well into the hundreds of millions of dollars in
Yeah.
revenue. So you can only kind of reverse engineer some math of he made a lot of money when he sold.
Yeah.
And it's this unbelievable sacrifice and martyrism, or so, whatever you want to call it, to get to that. And then you realize, wow, that was the wrong goal. That sucks. I mean, I know you're
Yes.
not dealing with a lot as much people maybe that sell, but like, when and how do you see people come to that conclusion? Like, what breaks in the equation so that way people don't have to do that, Austin, right? Like what a shame that like someone didn't enjoy the entire journey, even though they were making that kind of money. I mean, does that make
Oh,
sense or relate?
100%. Definitely see the exact same sort of thing happening. And I have worked with a bunch of entrepreneurs who have gone on to sell their business for like $100 million, right? It's a lot of money. And that, I think when I was in my early 20s, like getting into entrepreneurship, that was like I could not, without having any exposure to it, you can't recognize that, oh, that's not the correct end goal for everybody, or like that's not a perfect end goal. And then as you get more exposed to it and you recognize that, from the experience that I've had working with people that have had gone on to successful exits, like they all look back incredibly fondly on the journey, and like the time when they're sitting in that small office and they're grinding away with like two or three other employees trying to figure out how to make their next $10,000, right? Like of sales. And my belief on this is that it comes down to, it goes back to freedom in a certain sense, that like as the business grows, there are different ways that the business can evolve out of your like level of freedom. That's not the right best way to describe it. What I mean by that is like as it grows and there's more like systems, processes, all these things going on, it can become less exciting for somebody who is motivated by creativity, entrepreneurship, and like early stage dynamic growth. And unless you maintain that as you continue to grow, and you like really are intentional about how you think about maintaining that in your company, you can lose interest in your business. And then when you sell it, then you're like, well, if you don't have something else you're super passionate about to do, well, then you just lost basically 80 or 90% of what you're doing in your waking hours, and all the identity that you have tied to your business is now gone. And so that can leave like a big hole for people.
Well said, man. And like I would say that every bit of my experience over the last decade it completely validates what you just said. And when you were kind of looking for the word of expands past your freedom, I want to maybe through and fill in a word there. There's that. Are you familiar with the word flow?
Yes.
The zone flow. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote a book about this back in like the 70s or something like that. And what I've described in our first principle is like you have to have this nice balance between you're good at the skill and also you're learning and like
Yes.
the feedback loop. But like I think what to your point, I see this a lot too. And someone enjoys certain activities. Like I'm a visionary, right? Like I love
Yeah.
innovating. Like, and I'll go back to some point in a second, but like, I love innovating. I do love certain things, but at some point I'm like, this sucks. Like, so we're in the process right now of systematizing a lot of our company and all these things. I'm just like, this is just like, I already see this movie unfolding. And so I'm like, well, I'm bored. Like
Yep.
I have no interest. And so like, but someone else who's an engineer might like, but so I think maybe to your point, Austin, I don't know if you've got any of your network or your community that you've seen people do this successfully where it takes like self-reflection to say, what is it that I actually enjoy in this business?
Yes.
And then being okay staying with it. I don't know where this whole like, hey, you have to be the CEO in quotes on of your business if you hate it. I mean,
Yeah.
like you can hire someone to do that, by the way. They might, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how, like, does that make sense?
Well, I also think a lot of people actually would enjoy the role of CEO if they didn't have to do the role of CEO plus COO plus like head of finances and HR, all those different things. Right. Like there are a lot of people that are like truly
Mhm. Entrepreneur visionaries. Yeah.
visionaries, but when they're so backlogged with all this other stuff that they hate, and this I think happens more in like a little bit smaller businesses, kind of in like businesses that are making the leap from like 3 million to like 10, 15 million, where like you're like, when do I hire people? How do I take things
Mhm.
off my plate? That's where I think people can get kind of burned out. And at the end of the day, like you just need to stay in the game long enough. If you're having some level of success and you're continuing to grow, like the worst possible thing you can do is burn yourself out. Because if you can just stay in the game, the compound returns allow this business to grow and your return to be a lot better. But if you're frustrated with doing the things that you hate, you're not going to be able to do that.
Have you got good examples of where, or maybe not good examples or tools like, cause this is a big self-awareness issue,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, are you
And
seeing
it's
how
also a
like,
moving target, right? You like want to do something and like it. And then I think rather than thinking about like individual activities that you like, I think more about like trying to understand what you are best at. The Colby score. Are you familiar with the Colby score?
yeah, what are
Yeah.
you? Yeah, I'm a quick start.
Yeah. I'm a high quick start as well. I think I'm a 88571, which is like high research, high high quick start, very, very low implementer, and pretty low on like the follow through this sort of system side of things. And so rather than thinking about individual activities that I really like to do, I always try to think about how can I reflect the way that I generally operate. And that means like get started on new projects, research things. But the moment it's on the whiteboard, I can already visualize it already being created and done. So I need to get some help with that. I think
I'm
you
laughing.
resonate with that.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is just maybe like way too relevant right now because we got we got our Colbys recently because we got a bunch of clients running the US too, and I'm
Yeah.
very familiar with that all. And so I'm a 9 quick start and my
Yes.
partner is a 1.
Oh my gosh.
So
So
you
you guys
saw
are a
Pat,
great match.
I was gonna say you saw us go back and forth on the
Yeah.
presentation, and so like so over the last 12 months, we like 99% of America did puzzles recently because there's nothing else to do at home,
Yeah.
right? So we Pat and I started talking about how we build our puzzles. I'm like, I want to see the picture, build the frame, I want to categorize everything by colors, and then I'm done. I don't
Yes.
care. And he's like looking at the shapes, and then and I'm just like, you're so right though, man.
Yeah.
And I think what ends up happening as it relates to the business, you feel that burnout when you're all of a sudden you're in a different area that you hate and you have no idea how to get yourself out. I mean, it because and
Yes.
then people make the rash decision to sell to get out, and then they end up on my show explaining what they wish they would have done differently.
Yeah. For sure. I think that's a great example of one, like it's so awesome that you could have a business partner that offsets you that way, because that way you can both work on the things that give you energy versus take them away, take the energy away from you. But yeah, I think that's how I think about it and how I work, like talk to my clients about it. It's like, well, let's rather than think about the individual activities, because those are always going to change. Like, what role do you need to be in that is going to continue to give you energy? Because if you hate what you're doing, you're probably in a role where it's not a perfect fit. And then also you probably don't have a lot of leverage over your life. And that's also where I see a lot of very easy, like I'm going to say easy wins, but like huge wins being made is when people come and they like join my community and they start learning about the stuff you can automate in your business, and the marketing that you can automate and the tools that you can use to be able to take a lot of the stuff that you're doing on a consistent basis that might burn you out if you have to keep doing it, and turning it into something that works for you consistently. And then you hire, and building a system to hire as well, because everybody hates hiring if they don't have a really, really, really good system for it. But if you reverse engineer hiring and you create a system that always pulls in and attracts incredibly talented people, well, you can change that in your mind and you can start to love hiring, because you're going to bring in people that add enthusiasm and ideas to your company, and it makes it a lot easier to run the business.
Anything that looping back one of the earlier parts of the convo is there a way that you have seen people or you yourself have gone through to effectively in that process trust the people or build the trust to be confident to do the things you just described?
Yeah. So that, I think, all comes down, that for me is at the front end of the process. And that's the hiring process, right? Like I have a very methodical hiring process that is multiple rounds. And so one of the biggest mistakes I think business owners make and this happens, I think, really with marketing founders, but both founders as well, but they get really good at marketing their product. And they don't even think about marketing their business to people that they want to bring in, right? So they got these incredible sales funnels, and then they go post like a 6-bullet job post on on LinkedIn, and they expect like incredible people to come to their company. Not going to happen. It's not.
So interesting.
So my process is like very methodical around hiring, and it starts with first creating an incredible role, right? Like an incredible job for a role for somebody, and telling the story of what that role means to the business and attracting people. And then goes through multiple rounds of application and we use like our own like hiring. We used to use Airtable, which is an awesome tool. And we ask questions that help determine if they're a good fit. So as they go through multiple rounds, by the time we have a conversation, they've already started to do some of the work they might be doing in this role.
Mm.
And we can see how their work kind of matches up. And then we build, a relationship with them and figure out if they're the right fit. So by the time we hire them, we have a pretty good idea that they're going to be able to do the job. And then we start with a 90-day trial period. And after those 90 days, if a person makes it through all of that, they're usually an incredible fit. And
do you have personality tests that you do in the middle of all that for the
do,
positions?
do a Colby score, so we can kind of get a feeling of how people are going to operate in the business. And we go in with an idea of what the ideal Colby score for this role might be, right? Like somebody in a support role is often going to need a lot of follow through because it's a consistency type thing. And somebody who's like high quick start, low implementer, low follow through, it's probably not going to do that well in the support role over the long haul. They might do good initially, but not over the long haul.
Not once you figure out what the role is, then you're done, which is maybe a couple.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I've learned this role. Can I get somebody else to do it? And so, how do I trust people? I think a lot of it comes down to the hiring process, and then building a relationship, and then also like trust but verify. Right? There's like you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and then only and see how far they can go and take their role. And then if you realize that things aren't going well, then you can always go back and figure that out. But you'll definitely lose more by not trusting people than you will gain from always being afraid of what someone's going to do in your business.
Yeah, I had one of my really good friends years back. He goes, Ryan, you have some awesome people that accumulate around you. I'm like, you have any idea how many ridiculous idiots I had to go through in order to like find these good people? Like, and maybe it is a strong word, but you just like, it's just like, you're constantly shopping for good fits based on personality, based on where you're at in your business. And like, it just takes a while, but I don't know. I've found where like the effort of going through that pain is so worth it. I wouldn't have found my business partner, right? I mean, I went through a couple other business partners before I found him. Like, I mean, like, and it's so worth it.
So
if
worth
you
it.
know what you're looking for. And I think maybe what I heard from what you just said is you trust the process that you designed that should kick out the highest probability of success.
100%. And every time I've not gone through the process, I've made a mistake. I've ended up that person's not been around. Right. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to cheat the process here and take a referral from somebody who I trust. And that usually has not worked out for me. And it's like, if you're going to take a referral, have them go through some part of the process, the most important part for you to determine that they're a good fit. And also the other part of that is getting really clear about what you value. And we have five or six values that we talk about in our story when we're attracting new in our job post. And like, if somebody reads through that, they're either going to resonate or it's going to completely turn them off. They're like, this is not the job for me. And that's the goal.
Right. Like, it's good. It's a good thing.
It's a great thing.
So
it's a great thing.
One thing, and I'm way bringing my confirmation bias to this comment. So over the last handful of years, I've dove way deep into the finance world of business, right? And it was really kind of just in my entire journey of trying to find the root cause of why entrepreneurs don't have control over building a more valuable business with more choices. And it just kept coming back to financials. And
yes,
when I look at all the things that we've talked about are super real. And like, I just want to make it's almost like I don't know if it's a belief or like an observation that I kind of hold at the top of my head. And I want to know whether you think it's like how accurate I may or may not be, is like, when you go from a smaller business and then you grow rapidly without funding, by the way, without burning through other people's money for no apparent reason, right? Like, I'm talking like you're organically growing your own business. The things that I watch as I look at projecting out all three financial statements now with the kind of clarity that I now know is possible. I never knew it was possible before. And it was like, look at the bank account, look at the income statement. Hopefully we're doing all right. And versus like what happens is that, as I've noticed, Austin, people go, well, you're burnt out. You're like, well, you just hire these people, do this. And you're like, well, the individual for the first time in 7 years can pull down six figures and actually pay for all the shit in their life. And you're just like flippantly saying, hire this and do that and do this. And you're like, well, the only thing I have is time at this point, and I'm finally starting to make money. So like there's this like actual gridlock with the financials. They're like the business owner. I would say that 99% of them are like, hey, like of course I would want to do that. I have no idea how to afford it. I'm buying it, in your world, especially depending on whether people are warehousing the inventory or whether they're doing drop ship, on demand. You're buying inventory. 0 to 10 million could actually make you go bankrupt
Oh, for
because you
sure.
have no
For
money.
sure.
So like I think there's this issue of like, how do I ladder up to the point where I can actually continue to pay for my life? I don't sacrifice my life, but I also can grow my business, but not feel guilty from all the other people who have taken on money or raised this around. I mean, I don't know. Am I like how accurate or not accurate, but like, is there some truth in what I'm seeing?
Yeah, I think there's truth in it for sure, and it tends to, from my experience working with people at entrepreneurs at different levels, when they're up at like the 10, 15, 20, 25 million dollar revenue level, they're like dialed in on finances because they have to be. They're like this. Oh, they realize that that's such an important part of their business when they're down the $3 to $5 million range, or maybe $1 to $5 million range. Sometimes they're not focus on it as much because they're just still trying to market and grow the business. And the way that I see it is that, the profit in your business is the lever that you have for more freedom in your life. And
Mhm.
that freedom could be taken in different ways. That freedom could be pulling in more money for yourself and paying for your lifestyle, or it could be paying for getting back more time, and getting back more time so that you don't burn yourself out doing the stuff that if you're working 60 hours, 60, 70, 65 hours a week, and you're making a lot of money, well, what's the point of that? Where is that going? Like, what are you going to
So
do with
true,
it?
right? Yeah.
Right. And I think that those are some of the unhappiest people that I've worked with, the ones that are making a lot of money but have no time to either enjoy it, use it, and it just goes to
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
So as far as my, like, where I see your comment coming from is like, it's a challenging place to be to determine where you want to deploy your capital, and where, like, and where you want to put it, and like, what's the most valuable use of it. But at the same time, at the end of the day, it's, if you're taking like a market based wage and you're able to like not let your lifestyle creep grow outrageously high, and you can live off of that, well, then all that profit that you've got in the business of running a profitable business is the freedom that you've got to decide what you want to do in your life. And I encourage people to take more time off, because the more time that you take off, like I've got a client who I've worked with for a couple of years, and when we first started working together, he was working 6 days a week, cut back to every Friday he goes and golfs. And
Awesome.
it's been one of the best things for the business because he's had to trust and utilize his team a lot more, and it's helped him realize who can hang and who can't. And they have systems set up so that when he's out golfing, the business continues to move forward, and it's like it's a good tell for how well organized the business is, and it's become
Mhm.
a lot more profitable since then.
Mhm. It's super helpful, and I think it is the big challenge. I think you alluded to too is like, where do you deploy this to equal your freedom, right? Like, because I mean, like, it's so funny. It's like we all have only a few choices every year. How much money do we reinvest? How much money do we take out? And if we take it out, hopefully those decisions that you're making are enhancing your freedom journey
Yes.
instead of
If
buying
they're not,
unproductive
if they're
stuff.
not, you're doing it wrong. If you're making more money and you've got less freedom, like, what is the point? I don't know. I don't know what the point is. It's
Someone
like,
should tell us, because I don't have an answer to it either. Right? Like,
yeah,
yeah, satisfies some childhood grudge you've got against someone or something.
yeah. I mean, I think that is just the trap, though. That's a trap that you can get into, because it's harder to make choices. To your point of where do you deploy capital to make your life easier and give yourself more freedom, that's not easy, right? You have to be really thoughtful about what you want, and what you want changes, And sometimes it's easier to, yeah, fulfill like childhood fantasies and buy like a car that depreciates immediately and might make you feel good in the moment, but doesn't, it provides you with less freedom down the road. Again, we're not talking about like upgrading to a car that is serviceable from the,
Like a nice car you
yeah,
deserve,
no,
right?
no, no, it's
Yeah.
not that. It's
The
it's
McLaren that's 6 grand a month that you drive,
yeah.
a dozen
It
times every
and
every
people,
so often.
I'm not judging any. Some for some people that is massive freedom to them, and that feels incredibly powerful.
That was their
But
thing.
that's their thing, right? And if you're thoughtful about that, and that actually truly brings you joy, that's incredible.
And like I gotta just clarify one part of that comment because there's a couple guys in my YEC group with that love their McLarens. And
Yes,
I, honestly, like if anybody should own one, it should be these guys because
yes,
they spend more time in that than I do in my house.
they
So
probably
like,
love it.
yeah, all for it, man. Like go for
Great.
it.
And that's the thing. It's like it's being thoughtful about that and trying to decide what you want. And if that's truly a good use of it, that allows you to have more freedom and feel better about what you're doing. Great. It's just making those choices. That can be challenging, right? And again, it's a moving target. And yeah,
So how are kind of shifting a little bit here? How are you and your community and the places that I know you're spending a lot of time in the networks dealing with the insane growth in e-commerce? I mean, we all knew that this was a thing, right? Like, and especially like, you obviously have known it for a long time. And but like the rest of the world kind of woke up because of COVID. You and I
yeah,
have been going like, well, duh, I've been having my stuff ordered for a decade now. But like, yeah, like the rest of the world going, okay, now here it is. This is the thing. You got Shopify that's exploded, and you've got
dominant.
Amazon, and like the amount of compounded growth, the aggregators coming into the space. And like, so how are you guys processing what's going on? Is there kind of like, okay, what is the overall like consensus of where people are marching towards and how they're handling this?
Well, to put it in perspective, right? Last year, basically, this is being recorded in April, and that's 2021. And April of 2020 was kind of the kickoff, right mid-April, of like when sales started to really boost in
Mm-hmm.
e-commerce. As people in March, it was still like, what is going on? Everyone was still kind of nervous. And from what I've seen with my clients, it's been a wild roller coaster of growth for the last year. And at this point, a lot of people have just been holding on, trying to staff up to be able to continue to operate. And the people who have won were the ones who placed the people who won were the ones who placed big bets on inventory and have inventory right now because we're feeling like the pull of more demand and less supply right now. Right, there's still challenges with
Mm-hmm.
factories, warehouses, and not able to get products. I think for the most part right now, it's somewhat of a gold rush of demand happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been talking a lot about with my community, like at this point, what can you do to make this more sustainable? How can you develop products that are subscription based? How do you develop products that are higher margin? If you're selling other people's products, how can you white label stuff to be able to increase the margin in your business? What type of marketing can you automate so that it's happening rather than just adding people to your business? As you grow, you add sales without people, and
Mm-hmm.
SMS marketing, email marketing is a great way to do that. And yeah, I think for the most part, a lot of the people that have had success in this have been in it for years and kind of saw it coming and were hopefully a little bit prepared. And when it
Mm-hmm.
hit, they're like, all right, let's go. Like,
Yeah,
let's
this
make it
is
happen.
it's like a surfer sitting out waiting for the wave, and then here it is, and it's
Yeah.
not shocking, but you're excited to ride it. I'm curious, like Austin, because in the different pockets, the online entrepreneurs that I spend, is it like are people going, oh look, this is the time to have multiple arbitrage and grow this up and sell it to Thrasio or one of these other aggregators, or and I'm assuming there's probably, I mean, obviously there's a spectrum, but like
Yes.
are like I guess my question is like, are there entrepreneurs out there that have been building a sustainable business that are planning to keep it or to like, all of a sudden start manufacturing or want to get into inventory or get off of Amazon into Shopify to create an old brand? Like, like, is there a percent like, hey, let's just use this as a gold rush, or hey, like, let's use this wave to actually enjoy a sustainable life as an entrepreneur?
I think there's different buckets, right? You've got people that for a long time, Amazon selling was like an on ramp to entrepreneurship for many people, and still
Hmm.
is to a certain extent. It's like, oh, you don't know what to do? Go sell on Amazon, and there's this huge opportunity. I think that that's less so than it has been in the past because it's just harder to make
Harder,
money.
right?
It's
Yeah,
harder to make
just
money doing it, and Amazon's competing against you. There's massive competition from overseas. That's one group of people. You've got people who are like brand owners, and that's a totally different group where they found something that's cool, whether it's a product or an idea that they developed, and they're just trying to build a brand around it and grow it as fast and grow it quickly and eventually have an
sustainably. Yeah.
exit. Yeah, sustainably have an exit. And then you've got another group of people that are buying multiple businesses and kind of, I like this model of, and I've had a couple guys on the podcast, one guy named Shaquille Prasla, who's got,
I know Shaquille.
Shaquille. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Shaquille,
I definitely know what Shaquille's up to.
yeah,
That's awesome.
he's buying multiple e-commerce businesses, and he's using his SEO uh, expertise to grow them and build a portfolio of companies that they'll be able to then sell at a higher valuation
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
future. And I think that's where a lot of the smart money is. It's that, and also investing in, I mean, it's a really hot market for software, e-commerce marketing software and attribution software. All these companies are getting massive valuations. I saw that Klaviyo, one of the leading email service providers for e-commerce for Shopify stores, it's a $4 billion valuation. Just raised money right now.
Yeah, we're edging into a topic where I'm just like, well, this is a macroeconomic monetary policy issue, but because like you just put the throttle down on money, and the money's got to go somewhere,
Yeah,
and it goes into already very well good businesses and the good trends, but the trends just get exacerbated, and it's ridiculous. And that's where like another like underlying thought that I had on that comment was like, what my hope is, Austin, honestly, that like a lot of the people in your community realize that they have the opportunity to ride the smart, sustainable wave and create one hell of a life and a lot of wealth. If they, and sometimes it might be saying, hey, no to the quick money of someone that just wants to scoop you up for a few million bucks, like a Hoover vacuum, pull in your product, and then you have to go rebuild like net proceeds, right? How much did you actually walk away with? How long can you sustain your income off of that sale? And you're going, wait a second, like now in 4 years you have to restart all over again if
yeah,
you went for the quick money. I just hope that there's enough people that can put that in context, going, hey, this is kind of a time thing.
yeah. I think it's interesting because people have different levels of expertise. There are people that do things that I'm always blown away by, like people that can see an opportunity, like flip it really quickly. That's really interesting. I'm interviewing John Warlow
Yeah, nice.
later today, and so I've been reading his book, The Art of Selling Your Business, and it's got some interesting ideas in there. One of the things he talks about is like 10-year increments, like building in 10-year increments, and then taking some time off, which I think is interesting. And I think at the end of the day, like what's the more I talk with people and the more exposure I have to this community of entrepreneurs, the more I realize that everybody can do it entirely different. And if anybody has like a very strong way of telling you that this is the only way you should do something, they're generally wrong or they're selling something. And and if you go back to like principles of, if you could be in a position where you can do what you're doing consistently over time and be comfortable with the idea of selling it or not selling it, you're in a wonderful, wonderful position. And you don't want to be on either side of that, where you feel like either you have to sell or you don't want to sell, or, you feel like you're burned out. You don't want to be there, because if you can take care of your energy and like your ability to create over time, just you just don't want to get wiped out. And the longer you can stay in the game, you have the ability to have ongoing success. And that's what's cool and exciting. And one of the things that I'm just like I'm a student of.
I mean, I don't even know what else to say. I mean, you could drop the mic off that last comment. Because I agree, right? Because like it's this balance, and this is like it's this balance of doing what you enjoy, but then having like the finances has to be enabling that. You can't have. I think to your point, you can't have one of those be your master. Because like
No.
you could go do
He-
this, but you're going to be a broke artist, or you could go do this and you could be a super wealthy Wall Street financial arbitrage and miserable. So like what you just said is just options you to be able to fund your creativity.
and you need to know what business that you're in. This is the thing I think people don't like, especially in my space. It can be confusing because you can have a brand and you can look out and you can see that you're competing with like a venture backed company, and they're playing a different game than the game that you're playing if you're bootstrapped, because your game is don't run out of money and continue to grow. Their game is spend as much money as possible to grow as fast as possible. So if you're bootstrapped and you're looking at growth as something that your business is tracking without paying attention to profitability, you're going to burn out quick, and you'll never be able to win this game. And you're going to get in a position where you're going to have to raise money or on
Sacrifice
terms
your
that you
life
don't
or
like.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So just having
Awesome.
awareness there.
This has been a blast, man. Very much enjoyed this conversation. Two final questions for you. One, what does the word intentional mean for you?
For me, intentional means what I feel.
I like it. Where does everybody find you? I know you dropped the email at the beginning, or the website at the beginning. Why don't you
Yeah.
give it to everybody again?
So if you want to listen to me talk more, you can go listen to the e-commerce influence podcast. We have about 300 episodes with business owners, and we talk a lot about building wealth, finding more freedom in your life, that sort of thing. And if you want to work together, you can head over to brandgrowthexperts.com, which is my company. And we've got a community called the Coalition, which you can join. And Ryan's in there, Pat's in there. They did an excellent training, which we got a lot of good feedback on. And yeah, I would say every like once a month, someone will be like, "Hey, I just listened to Ryan and Pat's training. Like, I'm so excited about this," because it's a mindset shift for them.
Yeah, fun and finance in the word same sentence. Who would have thought, right?
Thinking about long-term value. So
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on the
cool.
show.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.